You guys are on the One More Idea podcast. Thank you so much for coming back. Let's jump right in.
Yeah.
So this is Michael Moore here.
I'm Mike DeLuna.
And, we believe, just like Thomas Edison says, I have not failed. I found 10,000 ways that won't work.
Yeah.
All he needed was that one more idea of encouragement, of breakthrough, of whatever it was that helped him discover the light bulb. And that's what we're here to help you guys do today, is to help you have your aha light bulb moment.
Absolutely.
So, why don't we just go ahead and jump in? I wanted to do our blitz idea with a couple of things, and the first thing was a question that I wanted to throw your way. And let's say and on my other podcast, which was called oh my gosh, I forgot the name I forgot the name of my other podcast. The Bride Side.
Yeah.
The Bride Side podcast. So I used to ask this question, and I believe that the quality of your question determines the quality of your answers.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to find an answer to some of life's toughest questions, or some of life's toughest situations, you need to ask really good questions. Because here's what happens. Our mind races to find a solution.
Yeah.
So here's the question for you and you guys today is, when you see somebody going down a really bad, just negative path, what are some things that you can do, or what's the best step towards helping them to change?
Yeah. Man, honestly, I think that people, for one, you have to admit to yourself that you have a problem in the first place and that you want to change. I think that's a standard first question of like a 12-step program. Not that I've ever done one before, but I do have friends that have recovered through situations in life, and the first thing that you have to do is recognize that you have a problem and that you need change. For one, you can spend hours and hours working on someone, trying to convince them to do something different or have a bigger mindset or whatever you want to call it. But if they don't make up in their mind that they accept that or they want that, you're going to be like really beating your head against the wall. So, let's just hypothetically say, since you brought the question up, that someone does say, I'm seeking change. I'm really I want to do something different. This year is going to be the year, being that we're still sort of in the New Year's kind of. I think one thing that we preach and talk about a lot on this show is replacing negative habits with positive habits and then stacking them until eventually your negative habits are, they kind of go away, or they're not as potent. And number two, I would say self-talk. What do you tell yourself? Like, what are you telling yourself right now? Like, when you see yourself in the mirror, are you encouraging yourself, or are you thinking negative thoughts about how bad your nose looks, or man, I hate my eyes, I hate my facial hair, I hate these gray hairs in my head? Or are you embracing who you are and realizing that we're all flawed and we all can use some change and encouragement? And finally, number three, man, I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but this podcast is meant to be motivating and life-changing. So listen to something positive. Listen to replace the negative media. I mean, we kind of see what's going on in the world right now, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't at least be up to speed with current events, but, man, replace some of that stuff with a podcast like this or YouTube, or look up positive quotes, which is sometimes what we throw out at you. But, man, that's my 3 little ways I feel like somebody can start to embrace change.
So here is a really cool quote that we'll go into. One way to define wisdom is the ability to see into the future. So the consequences of the choices in the present. So this is a defining quality of wisdom. You're able to look upstream, see into the future, and what you're able to see is the consequences of your choices in the present. So that's just a blitz idea I wanted to throw out there.
Yeah. Wow. So man, that's powerful. I heard it a different way put, that like in leadership, a good leader is able to see the obstacles and the challenges that are already here without you even kind of like being able to game plan and to come up with solutions before there's a problem. And I think that's kind of what that's saying. But if you just break that down into like just normal day life, I think what it really is saying is that what you're doing right now is affecting you in the future, whether you see it or not. But a good person, a good leader, someone prepared for life will already have these expectations of what the things you're doing, your habits today are actually causing, whether it's good or bad. And just so you know, there's a flip side of that coin. It's not just negative. Like the good things that you're planning today, like if you stop drinking a Coke, 190 calories, if you take that out of your diet today and do it for the next 2 or 3 months, then at the end of the year you're going to see a result. Mike, I'm gonna say this: the hardest thing for the little bitty things in life, like the can of Coke or maybe the 30 minutes extra in the gym, is that you don't see immediate results from it. Like if I go work out tonight, I'm not gonna be ripped but one time. But if I do it consistently over the next year, then you're gonna see those compounding results from doing that over and over again. So anyway.
Well, I heard Craig Rochelle talk about why is it so hard to start a good habit versus a bad habit? Mm-hmm. Typically, bad habits, we see the effect immediately, but good habits, things like losing weight or exercising is so hard or maybe even money management, things like learning, education, they're so hard because you don't see the result immediately. Good habits take time, and you see the result after a long while of committing to it nonstop. So there's another blitz idea for you guys. Yeah. But why don't we jump into the big idea? Yeah. And so there's a book that I've started reading. I know I sent it to you. Yeah. And it's really good. And the name of it is by Michael Hyatt and Megan Hyatt Miller, which I believe is his daughter, and it's called "When at Work, Succeed at Life." So win at work and succeed at life.
I just ordered that yesterday, man. Should be here today.
So he talks about how, there's this stigma, and he uses this example just to kind of like summarize of he had this job that he was trying to take to the next level, their sales and their profit and everything. And he told his boss, I'll make this happen in 3 years. Well, within those 3 years, he worked long hours. He, most likely worked on vacations. Yeah. Like when he came home, he was constantly thinking about work, and he easily probably put like 80 plus hours, bare minimum into his job, and ended up at the end of, I think 2 years is how long it took him to reach that goal, got a bonus check, and his bonus check was more than the amount of money that he makes annually, like in a year. Just in one check. And he went home to celebrate and to tell his wife about it. And she said, wow, that's so cool. I'm so happy for you. Yeah. We need to talk. And having a wife, when she says that, is kind of, it's like, uh-oh, I'm sleeping on the couch now. Yeah, right. But she said, I'm so proud of you and so appreciative that you're making this money for our family and providing for us. This is great. And like, you should be doing that, but you're working so much that you're never home. And even when you are home, you're not home mentally. Yeah. And, your daughters need you. You're missing their life. They're missing your life. And, I need you, and I can't do this alone. I literally feel like a single mom trying to raise these kids. Right. And so that's the premise of the book, is like, how do we succeed at work and at life, home life especially? Because if you're doing really good in the workplace, but your home life is suffering, that's not true, in my opinion, and kind of what he lays out in this book. True success is not only succeeding at the workplace, but it's also at the home place. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you one more thing. I had a guy that I used to go to church with. He wanted to meet with me, just kind of disciple me and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he gave me an evangelism book. And then I'll never forget, this was before I was married and everything. He said, make your home and being a husband your biggest ministry. Because the mistake that I made is what he's telling me. He's a way older gentleman. Mm-hmm. He said, I spent hardly any time at home, and I missed my son's lives. It like flashed before my eyes. And I made a ton of money, but I was just never home. And I wish that I could go back and redo it, because I would have, I guess in his mind, succeeded at not only work, but at life too. So
Man,
what are your thoughts
that's
on that?
awesome. Well, for one, I appreciate the reference on that book, man. I ordered it yesterday and I tracked it this morning, and it should be here today. So that's a awesome. For one, to have someone and to encourage you with different books, and that's one thing that we do a lot here. I met somebody yesterday, and I was telling her about all the books I read, and she's like, "Wow, so you seem to read a lot of books." And the truth is, or she said, "You have a lot of time." Truth is, I don't have a lot of time to read, but it's almost like one of those things like giving or tithing, like you can't afford to not do it. So reading is just so imperative to gaining a different perspective. So I'm looking forward to the book. But Michael told me a little bit about it yesterday, and ever since then I started thinking about this work-life balance. And I think everybody's looking for that elusive, like, middle of the line, like, this is where you have to be. You should work this many hours, and you should, the truth is that I think we were talking about this in my small group the other day, is that there are some people that work so many hours a week, and it's not that they're chasing the money, or it's not that they're intentionally trying to, like, ignore their family, but sometimes, and here's an aha for you, sometimes you're doing something to stop from having to focus on something else. So it doesn't mean that they're a bad parent. It doesn't mean they're a bad husband. It's just that maybe they're dealing with some things internally. Like for me, we talk about grief in my small group, and so one person said, I worked during my grieving period. I worked 80 hours a week. So, you may look at him and say, well, you're neglecting something else because you're spending so much time at work. But his mindset was, it keeps me from thinking about my loved one that has passed away. So I think, for one, if you're dealing with someone, this is not a therapy show, but this is some good advice. If you're dealing with somebody that's working consistently so much, and that's your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, then you may need to check and see if their motivation is just providing for you. That's why they're doing it. They want to get to the next level in work, and they're not realizing they're neglecting their family, or if they're dealing with something bigger than what you can see. People do other things to get their mind off of things that they're hurting or going through some things. So don't always assume that they're just intentionally trying to neglect you or your family. They might be dealing with deeper issues. But man, I'm looking forward to this book. I'm looking forward to diving into it, because me personally, I do work a whole lot, but I do make time for things like this. It's very important. So if you put in your schedule, and if you live by a schedule, you have time to do both. You can do your family. There's no excuse to not come to church because you're too busy. I had to work during the church time. If you block it off, and if you live by that schedule, you'll realize that you wasted more time not having a good schedule than having more time to allocate to things that's important. So that's my take so far on it.
Yeah, and this show is all about helping people to get that idea.
Yeah.
So maybe there's somebody who they're doing great in the workplace, but they're not doing good in the home place. Or maybe it's flipped. Maybe they're doing good in the home place and they're not doing good in the workplace. True. So we've talked about a ton of ideas on how to do good in the workplace. And I truly do feel like we've given people, like, up to this point, if they were to go listen to all of our podcasts, just a ton of really, really solid ideas. And I'm not just saying that like boasting. I'm just saying these are all resources that we found and stuff that we want to give to you guys so you can have that idea that gives you breakthrough. But I really think that this is kind of a shift because, I heard once, it was a really good sermon, I believe it was John Maxwell. He was talking about success. Somebody asked him, well, what is success? Or he asked somebody and they said, well, making a lot of money. Yeah. And he said, that's not necessarily success. And we talked about, I believe one of the first 3 episodes, we talked about the dashboard. Oh, yeah. And how, success is defined by more, and this is my understanding, more than just, the money that you make. And even with the money that you make, let's say, okay, you do make a lot of money. Well, is it just a lot of money, or have you invested? Do you have multiple streams of income? Yeah. Are you looking at stocks and because there's always a next level. We've never fully arrived, but success is more than just the money that we make. And I believe that this book really can help with that perspective, because, it's more than just like succeeding in home life too. It's, let's say that you have a great marriage, you have a great family, you have a great job, you make good money, but you're just wore out and just missing something. Well, maybe you're not getting enough sleep. Yeah. Maybe you're not in good health. And again, in the book, he talks about this guy who, it was pretty much just that situation. And he had a heart attack pretty much, or just like had heart problems and stuff. Wow. But it's because he didn't ever focus on what he ate. He just ate whatever, didn't ever exercise, wasn't healthy. So it's more than just, it's like it's like John Maxwell talks about the spokes. Like life is this wheel that's constantly going. We're constantly moving with time. And on each spoke of that wheel, each area that holds that wheel together so that it drives smoothly, is like, your education, which is the same as a dashboard. Yeah. It's your health. It's your mental, spiritual. It's like your financial. You have all these areas that make up, the spokes of the tire. Yeah. That if they're all, and I believe it's John Maxwell talks about, if they're not all at a 10, you need to do everything that you can within your ability to get them up to a 10, so that you have a smooth ride through life. And that's what I believe. That's what this whole book and this whole big idea kind of reminds me of, is that John Maxwell book. And he talks about it. There's a leadership 101, or he has a 101 series, and it is a gold mine of ideas. That is wow. Like,
yeah, you were telling me
my
about
secret
that.
weapon.
Yeah, yeah.
Of like getting out of the funk in life.
Well, I'm gonna ask you a question. I'll just jump in. Is it possible? And I guess it could be, but what's your take on this? Can you have a successful work life without having a successful home life? And I say that if you interview America's top executives that work 80 hours a week, and they have a home life too, and you ask them, hey, what does your day-to-day look like? What's your morning look like? What does your evening look like? When do you see the family? How much time do you spend with your kids? And get a real depiction of their life. In my opinion, it's very difficult to be truly happy in one and not be happy in the other. Like, if you make a lot of money but you've neglected your family, how happy are you truly? If on the flip side, you're at home and you're a great parent, you're a great dad, you're a great husband, great wife, but you're flat broke, I mean, how happy are you? So it kind of, to me, they both kind of feed on each other. And my second point is this. I'm just going to throw a word out there that I use a lot of, and that word is purposeful. And so here's the thing. Here's some tips for you, just, again, some ideas. That, do you have to wait till Valentine's Day to do something special for someone that you love? Do you have to wait for an anniversary? One way to improve home life and one way to improve work life, and we talked about this yesterday, is do some things at your job that's just not your job description. Do something that is outside of the norm. Like, you see trash, pick it up. Maybe you're not the janitor, but it's all of our responsibility to keep the place clean. Well, what about home? So, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to go home, and I'm a guy, and I'm just like going to go clean the house. Maybe it's something I don't normally do. Maybe I'm going to make sure I take the trash out before somebody yells at me, kids that are watching. Something to that effect. But if you are more purposeful with the categories that Michael was just saying, your health life, okay, let's be more purposeful with health. So can I wake up 30 minutes earlier every single day and maybe take that 30 minutes to exercise, maybe jog, maybe get on a treadmill, maybe hit the gym, maybe just do some push-ups for 30 minutes, sit-ups? Can you do that? Of course you can. You can wake up 30 minutes earlier. Can I wake up 30 minutes earlier and read one chapter of this book that Michael's talking about? Yes, you can. It's the implementation to implement it that actually is the hardest part, I think. It's like, we know what we need to do. We know we should spend more time. And let me just say this. I've been guilty of this. And one of my dear friends that is a mega superstar real estate agent, and his phone never stops ringing. And he told me, he said, when I realized that I had a problem? And I said, when? And again, this goes back to what Michael asked me earlier. You got to admit you have a problem first before you can start working on a solution. He said, I knew I had a problem when my wife I was looking through the family photo book, and we were at Disney, and every single picture I was in, I was like this with my cell phone, or I was behind a trash can trying to hide. And he said another thing that I do a lot of is when I go on trips with my wife, he said I would make sure she brings a really good book because I know she's going to need to read that because I'm always occupied with my business. And he said that's when I realized I had a big problem. And so since then, he's come up with solutions. He has assistants, he has admins, he has other people that handle a lot of his work to where he literally can say, I'm forwarding my phone to you for 2 days. I trust that you're empowered to make decisions. I'm spending time with my wife, and I'm going to be all in with her. I'm not going to be answering my phone. So anyway.
That's so good.
It's just an idea, man.
Hey, so I'm so glad you brought that up because I was taking notes about an idea that I had, and you gave us a TED Talk here for a second. That was a very good TED Talk. Applause for Mike. Seriously, though. But in the book, you're going to love this book because that last thing that you just talked about, okay? He talked to a psychiatrist or a therapist, counselor, and his wife was going to counseling and basically said, we're going to get counseling together. And he was dragging his feet. He wouldn't go. And finally he went, and his counselor was just asking him, well, these questions like, well, answer this. If you were to go on a vacation, can you not work? And he began to think and asked him another question. How about when you go home? When you're in the evenings, can you stop working at the house? And then he starts to just cry because he knew that he was the problem. And so he talked about how he started to try it. Like his counselor was like, hey, how about you go on vacation without thinking or working, thinking about work or without working? How about, when you're home in the evenings, if it's not done at work, you don't do it at work. Or you don't do it at the house. You leave work at work, and when you're home with the kids, you're home with the wife, just like what you're saying. Right. And here's what he said. When he set those boundaries, he said, you end up finding ways to get work done at the workplace differently than you would before. Because when you set those parameters of like, okay, when I go home, work is done. Well, then your mind is like, okay, I have to get work done before I go home. Yeah. So you begin to develop people, like you're saying, empower people who you normally wouldn't have. And you begin to find ways to streamline, to get things done, and to figure out how, like, okay, if I'm going to be home at this time and I have from this hour to this hour to get all this work done, if it's not done today, it has to be done tomorrow, or I have to delegate and get help to get this stuff done. And there's ways to still accomplish what you want to accomplish without burning out your family. But, I've experienced when my home life is a 10, my work life is a 15. Yeah. But when my home life is like a 4 or a 5, my work life is like a negative 15. It like just it can only enhance and make your work life better when your home life is top notch. Wow. So that's my TED Talk.
Well, I'll say this, and again, it goes back to that word, purposeful. So, okay, so if you know that you have to finish, you have a certain amount of time at work, then how many coffee breaks are you going to take? How many smoke breaks are you going to take? How many restroom breaks are you going to take? How many stops at the water cooler are you going to have with your other employees there that are talking about how, negative this place is? Or, what you start finding yourself when you live in the land of being purposeful is that you realize you only have a certain amount of time to do a certain task, and that's it. Because once you get home, your cell phone gets turned off, whatever, you forward your calls to whomever you've delegated to do that, and you're all in with the family, or you're all in on a vacation, or you're all in at the gym. Like I've seen I work out at the World Gym in Beaumont, and I see guys literally, they're on their phones or they're sitting around. And if you're going to the gym to hang out and socialize, that's fine. That's up to you. But my whole mindset is that I can get done in 30 minutes what some people might do in an hour because I'm purposeful. I'm purposeful at work to where I can get an 8-hour day done in 4 hours. I'm purposeful at home where I can focus on a task at home because I'm not answering my phone or I'm not on the computer checking emails while I should be doing the task at the house. And, I keep the house tidy. So I say all that to say that when you're at work, be all in and purposeful at work. When you're at home, be all in and purposeful at home. And what you're going to start seeing is that what you focus on is going to start expanding. So if you're focusing on your relationship, it expands. If you're focusing on your business, it expands. If you're focused on working out, it expands. So everything that you really are all in on, and the guys and ladies, we all know when we're really being purposeful. If like I'll just say something real quick. Like the set that Michael put together here is purposeful. Like we could have just like not had a banner. We could have just put some microphones together or just used our cell phone and recorded this podcast, and it would have been acceptable. But Michael went above and beyond, because I know him to be a very purposeful person, and made it, you know, a legit professional set. So we do that on the music team. We do that with everything you do. Again, we even prepare for this. We're purposeful with this because we just had a conversation yesterday about, okay, how can we make it more efficient? How can we make it flow better? How can we make the agenda something more that's purposeful for people that are really going to tune in and be life-changing? So, man, if you're not doing that with every single thing about efficiency, how can you get better? Then I feel like that's where you need to start.
Oh, man. So here's my final thoughts, because you just said something. Why, and here's my thought. Why don't more people think like that? And think like what? What am I talking about? This pursuit of always getting better at things. I was talking to my wife about it. I was like, I can't help. I'm always trying to get better, no matter what I'm doing. And it's kind of like, I had somebody explain it to me like this. When we live life, it's kind of like a car. Okay, you have neutral, and then you have reverse, and then you have drive. And then even with drive, some cars have different gears, right? So it's like, and I naturally have always been like this, but he explained it like, when you feel like you're in neutral, you got to be really, really, really focused on knowing that you're in neutral, and then do everything that you can to shift up into drive so that you're moving forward. You know, but what happens if you're in neutral, sometimes you'll start to slip into reverse, and then you're moving backwards. And that's real important for addicts, especially too, to know, because sometimes it's hard. Like addicts need to know like triggers. Okay. They have like the HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So if they're hungry, trigger. If they're angry, trigger. And sometimes it's all of them: hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. You know, well, what do you do? How do you navigate life? Because it's not just addicts. I believe that's most people, like hangry, you know, hungry and angry, but then lonely. Sometimes we get lonely, and that all of these emotions and these situations can trigger things. Well, maybe that's the reason why, in my mind, in my life, I've come up with this, you know, just this habit of, and maybe that's what it is. It's just a habit. People aren't in the habit of like constantly getting better. And I'll tell you the biggest compliment that like I just love to hear is, wow, man, you've really gotten so much better at that. Yeah. You know, and it doesn't matter what it is. When I hear that, like whether it's with music, with cooking, with exercise, it is like the biggest compliment. Like I've been exercising a lot. You know what I've been hearing a lot? Yeah. Wow, man, have you been exercising? Yeah. And to me, that is proof that people see that I'm growing. And maybe it's like this deep-seated thing that I have on the inside of me. I don't know what it is, but why aren't more people like that, Mike? And I'm curious on your thoughts.
So yeah, that's a really good question, and honestly, I've tried to uncover the answer to that question for a long, long time, because my job in the natural world is to build teams and to help keep them motivated and help them grow businesses to be able to feed their family and to be able to hit some goals that they personally have, and so I've spent hours dissecting, breaking down, you know, the human mind, basically. Like, why are some people just immensely successful and other people are, you know, just kind of middle of the line, and then there's other people that are just bottom feeders, if you will. Like, what is that? And then I start looking at everything from demographics to where they live at to where their upbringing was, and gender, does it have anything to do with being a male or female? And man, honestly, I think it all comes back to one or two things, and those one or two things are that, I'll say this: I don't think people celebrate the small victories enough. So I'm gonna say that again. On the road to success, you're gonna have some failures. You're gonna have a lot of failures, actually, and you're gonna have some successes, though. But I think what we do is when we get to that part where we're successful, like, let give you an example. Let's say I've lost 10 pounds, but I need to lose 20 more. Losing 10 pounds is not something that you should overlook. You shouldn't say, it's not a big deal. It's no big deal. Like, it's only 10 pounds. Or if somebody like sung a song at church and nailed it, but they still felt like, I could have did better. It doesn't matter. At that moment, you should celebrate your small victory. And you should say, you know what? I might not be where I want to be, but I'm not where I used to be.
Yeah.
And because what happens is, if you keep looking at that long-term goal as something that's elusive and you'll never get there, then the problem is that whenever you take those baby steps and you start saying, I am getting better, though, you won't take time to say, congratulations, Mike, you did a great job. Now what's next? What's the next step? So I say that to say this, is that I'm the type of person, and I know Michael is too, that if I'm building a model plane and it's Legos, if I put the wing together, I'm going to be like, wow, that's pretty awesome. I got so much more to go, but so far it's coming along really nice. Then when I get the fuselage together, I'm going to be like, wow, man, it's starting to look like an airplane. And finally, when I get to the end and it's a completed airplane, I can wow at my accomplishment. But the whole time I'm doing it, for me, seeing something go from just little blocks to a masterpiece, that drives me. So I'll say this: when you ask why are some people just successful and other people are not, for me, I'm going to start by saying what he asked me a minute ago, or that quote he just said, is that I can see the future as it is today, and I know that I'm just working towards it. So I think if you don't have the vision, then that's where I think some people are not as successful, because they don't know, number one, when they've arrived, because you don't have a vision. You don't know where you're going. And number two is that they don't take enough time to appreciate the journey. It's not the destination. It's along the way, because honestly, as we're living life, and every day that comes and goes, and we learn something and we lose something and we gain something, and so on, that is another page in your story, in your autobiography. We all have autobiographies, and I've said this before. So I love reading autobiographies. It's about somebody's life and their struggles and their passion and the things they've overcome, and that encourages me. Well, we're writing our own autobiography right now, and so I always say this, guys, and you've heard me say it before: if you don't like the story, change it. Write another chapter that's a little more pleasurable than the last one. But we control that. Even negative things, we control how we respond to.
That's so good.
Yeah, we do.
You were the author of your life. Yeah, I mean, Jesus is the author and perfecter of our faith, but you do have choices that you can make, to live the life that you want to live. And that reminds me of an amazing book. I think you're still on a roll, so I'll let you finish, and then I'll talk.
No, go ahead, man. You can.
I'm going to jump in then.
Yeah.
So there's a book called The Traveler's Gift, okay, by Andy Andrews. And it is probably one of the most amazing, life-changing books I've ever read. But in the beginning of it, he asks this question. He says, okay, is life just a lottery ticket that, like, some people win and some people lose? Or are there decisions that we can make to live the life that we want to live? Tell me that's not a good question.
Well, I mean, that's the biggest question. I feel like somebody is watching this, and they're just on the verge of, like, they needed to hear this, man, because let me tell you something. It does not matter your situation. It doesn't matter your upbringing. It doesn't matter how much money your parents had. It doesn't matter your education. If you make the decision to do something different in your life, you can do it. And that sounds generic. That sounds so basic. Like, I can do it, you can do it. It's all about the choices and the decisions and the seeds that you plant today. I teach this in my trainings, that everything is planting a seed, cultivating it, and reaping the harvest. Go back to your relationship. So, okay, you plant a seed, you cultivate it, which cultivating means you take your lady out on a date, you tell her she looks good today, you compliment, that's nourishing a relationship. The harvest is that, you look up and you're 85 years old and she's still with you because you've taken good care of the blessing that you were given. Okay, let's talk about finances. Planting a seed. We talk about that in church as, okay, I'm going to give to the church. I'm going to plant my tithe. I'm going to give my tithes. And sowing that is, where are you planting the seed? Nonprofit organizations? Or are you buying clothes every time you get paid? Or are you giving it to somebody in need? And the harvest is obviously, in God's word, it talks about blessing us where our cup runs over full. So I say all that to say that if you go back to the theory of planting seed, nourishing it or cultivating and harvesting it, it changes your mindset on, okay, if I'm in a bad situation, what's the first thing I need to do? I need to plant a seed. Okay, what does that look like in your life? Michael just gave you great books that you can read. That's one thing you can do to plant a seed in your mind and say, I'm changing the way I think. I'm changing the way I see things. And we're about to close in a minute, and Michael's going to give us an excellent quote from Albert Einstein that I think sums up our podcast today. But you have to change the way you think if you're going to change your future.
Yeah, and Albert Einstein says, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we used when we created them. So when we encounter these problems and these situations in life, one of the biggest things I ever learned was that, don't look at things in life like they're problems, they're opportunities.
Absolutely.
And I remember I was in a car when somebody told me that, and I was like, what on earth? What opportunity? And he's like, yeah, an opportunity for you to find a solution. And it was such a different way of thinking, because a lot of times we just think like problem, negative. And it's like, well, hold up, there is such a different way to approach life. You can truly live life however you want to live it. Yeah. And if you want to live life, I think this is one of the greatest. I never understood this when I used to hear it growing up. Do you look at life like the glass is half empty or half full?
Yeah.
And there is a way to look at life where it's half full. What does that mean? Half full is a positive outlook. Half empty is a negative outlook. So if you look at life in every situation that is half empty, you're already like depleted. You're already like negative connotations. Like, life's throwing me lemons. Oh man, now life is bad. Yeah. Or if you look at life like, wow, that's a lemon. Well, I was talking to somebody, like, there's this whole thing with vehicles. He bought this vehicle that he had to keep putting in the shop. And we're talking about lemons. I had a vehicle that I had to keep putting in the shop, that I got it, but I had the warranty and they fixed it. We were talking about how, really not every vehicle that you get is a lemon. Like, not all lemons are bad. Yeah. And yes, some vehicles are lemon, but just because it's a lemon doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. Yeah. It just means that it's an opportunity to try and fix. Wow. And some of them are unfixable, okay? Mm-hmm. But most of the time you'll see, and I've got to share this story. I had a car that was just co-signed for. It was one of the decisions I made in my early 20s. And the water heater core was going out. It's a $500 fix. And just on impulse, I decided that I would go to the dealership. Like, it was, I don't know, I maybe had like 6 payments before it was paid off. Mm-hmm. And instead of keeping it, what I did is I traded up, which isn't a horrible idea, because when you're right side up, you can trade up and still it's not that bad. But instead of like just paying it off and getting it fixed for $500, I got into a loan for like $15,000 and, had a more expensive payment month to month. and the car was traded up. So I've always looked back on that like, man, if I would have went back knowing what I know now, and there were some bad decisions that I made and some stuff, and I ended up actually getting that car repoed, and I've recovered from all that, and now my credit is like great. And not that I'm huge on credit and like credit cards and all that, but I'm just saying like I was able to recover from that repo. But what happened, that car that I wanted so bad ended up, getting repoed, and I still had to pay the bill on it, and I had to get another car. So then I had another bill on top of that bill, on top of like school loans. So you know what I mean? So it's like wisdom, and we talked about this, is being able to see the consequences of the choices that you make right now. And I want to go back to that other quote, and I think we'll land the ship here. Is life a lottery ticket that some people just like magically are born with, like, they win the lottery? Or are there choices that we can make? And the answer is yes. There are choices that we can make to live the life that we've always wanted to live. And, and I think a lot of situations that we find ourselves in have been the result, if you really look deep, of good decision, bad decision, but then good decision to recover, good decision. All of these good decisions lead up to like a situation that you want to be in.
Yeah. Seek. My advice is always seek wise counsel when you're making these decisions. Run it across somebody that like, and trust, and you value their opinion. And what I always do when I'm facing a big decision is I run it by somebody that I always say this: I wouldn't take advice from someone that I wouldn't trade my life with. So if I'm talking about making millions of dollars, if that's not a millionaire that I'm talking to, I'm not saying that somebody can't give you good sound advice, but if you're going to another level, like, talk to people that are doing it, that are living the life that your next step. So I would always say seek counsel, man. For me, that's a big idea, is ask somebody that will give you advice and that is going to be sound and it's going to help you. But man, I'm telling you, this is jam-packed with some great ahas, and so I guess we'll go ahead and land the plane, man.
Yep.
So this was good.
Yeah, you guys have a great week. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the One More Idea podcast.